Poker's legendary champions, next generation stars, and tireless ambassadors of the game, sharing their wisdom and guiding your journey to high achievement on the green felt. This is Tactical Tuesday on Chasing Poker Greatness with your hosts, Brad Wilson and Jon Chai.
Welcome, my friend, to another episode of the Chasing Poker Greatness podcast. As always, this is your host, the founder of ChasingPokerGreatness.com, Coach Brad Wilson. And today, I'm joined by Jon Chai. How you doing, sir?
Doing good. It's we're in WSOP right now. We're in it. It's not the beginning anymore. It's here, and everyone's in town. Are you gonna be in Vegas for WSOP this summer at all?
I am going to be in Vegas for the WSOP for a few weeks. Just hanging, chilling out. I have no idea what I'm going to do, like poker-wise.
What part of the summer are you coming?
I'm coming in the middle of June. So actually, as of this episode, I may actually be in Vegas by the time this episode comes around. So I'll be hanging around Horseshoe and probably visiting some jiu-jitsu gyms over those 2 weeks. So if you see me, come say hi. If you see Jon, please go say hi, just because I know it makes him feel awkward and strange. And I'm a big fan of making Jon feel awkward and strange. But I'm excited. I'm excited to play some live poker. As I said, maybe a few weeks ago, probably my plan, I would really like to play more cash games in this trip than I have been in going to these tournament series. Kind of getting the bug to play actual poker.
It's hard to play cash when you make day 3 every tournament, right?
It is. So yeah, just plan on playing some cash games, plan on doing some jiu-jitsu, plan on hanging out with you, plan on hanging out with the Wolves. And yeah, if you see me in there battling, come say what's up. But just been trying to get myself back in a frame of mind of competing. And I think that you and I have spoke about this privately, but in training jiu-jitsu every day, or well, not every day, but 3 days a week for the past like 6 months or so, my competitive juices are like getting engaged. I'm remembering, like, you know what? I used to be kind of addicted to competition for like close to 20 years. Like, no, I don't. It's not even winning. I don't win that much. I win very rarely. But it makes me savor the wins that I do get on the rare occasion that I get them. But like, yeah, just as like a 12 or 13-year-old, I was addicted to competition. Yeah. It was just a part of my spirit. I if there was anything that I could do on a daily basis, it would be some form of competition with my friends, my sister, just anybody that would play video games with me, or anybody that played basketball, anybody that play a sport. Like, we can make up a stupid game that doesn't really matter and the rules are very vague, and like, that's going to fill my competitive itch. So like, just very addicted to competition from a teenager until, just now. Probably late 30s. And now just not having competed a ton in recent memory, like in the poker space, just in, I guess, competing, but in a very different fashion as I used to. The game that I play now is in communicating strategies and helping people play better at poker themselves, and dealing with the inevitable downswings of poker, the emotional performance issue related, just a billion different things that, quite frankly, is infinitely harder than actually just playing poker myself and being able to, only have myself to deal with, and only be able to have my own problems that I have to think about and communicate and resolve. So yeah, I think that maybe that's what's getting me in a more competitive mindset too. Just remembering personal competition, how that felt, getting in there, battling, the amount of focus and presence that's needed to do something at a high level, to compete. Yeah, it's pulling me back in. And so, yeah, not going to say anything prematurely, but I'm feeling the competition bug. I'm feeling the poker bug a lot more than I have been over the past, couple of years. So it's good. Feeling good.
Yeah. All right. Well, hopefully you can hold off on the competition bug for like 30 minutes because I still need you in the communicating to other human beings how to play poker better mode
I
for the
I
next
don't think that's
two
ever going to
hands.
go away. Yeah, I don't think like
No, no, no.
I think the
I really need it these two hands. This isn't just like a,
the,
in general I need help. This is like, hey, I have ace king versus a fish and I don't know what to do, which is pretty rare. But that probably just goes to show how big the problem actually is.
yeah, we you know, what do you know about ace king, right? It's a drawing hand.
It's better than king queen, which is the
It's
hand I
better than
usually
king
have on
queen.
Tactical
Yeah.
Tuesday. So
Anna Kournikova, it
hopefully
looks good, but it never wins. That's we have all. If you ask somebody who busts out of a tournament what hand they busted with, right? 95% of the time it's ace king. So you just fold it pre. That's the obvious solution with ace king. Anyway, that's in case the podcast listener doesn't know, I'm just joking around. Ace king it's a really good hand. It's actually, one of the top 4 hands that you can get in this game. So anyway, let's move on to the hand in question. You have ace king. That's the theme of the day, right?
Yeah, it's actually it is the theme of the day is ace king specifically versus fish. I have 2 hands where man, I was like, it's even embarrassing to say that like I was in a spot, but I was in a spot versus players that are, in my opinion, not all that great at poker.
Yeah, the white belts.
Yeah.
So let's see how you do. Let's see the questions that you need to answer right now.
So we're playing 5-10, 4-handed. The reg and the cutoff opens to $20. I have ace king, as previously mentioned. I 3-bet to 70. And we have a whale in the big blind, like a real whale who has not 3-bet very much. I think his 3-bet percentage was like, under 5% over the 80 to 100 hands that we'd been sitting together. His 4-bet, I assume, was even lower than that. And I am 99% sure that he did not cold for a single hand until this point. So we get the $235 cold for from the whale. The size is actually pretty good. I think it's not, it's very much in the realm of like a reasonable cold 4, maybe a little bit on the big side. So just, I think a pretty good size from him. The
for the podcast listener, it's 20. Cutoff opens 20, button 70, and big blind 235 are the sizes.
The cutoff folds, and I think we have a decision here already pre-flop. If this was an all reg situation or just like not a whale in the big blind, not someone who had been playing extremely passively pre-flop for the last, hour or something like that. If it wasn't like that, I would just happily jam this spot. Cutoff button, big blind, just let's get it in with ace king and, not even really think about it. But I think that would be a huge mistake versus this specific player profile.
Yeah, it goes the other way, right? Where like you only have one option probably versus a reg, and now you've got 2 options, and one of them is fold.
Yeah.
It's fold or call spot. Definitely not jam.
Any thought to folding here versus the player that I just described?
I don't think it's the craziest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say like, oh yeah, that's like torching. Like I think folding is actually somewhat reasonable in this scenario.
Yeah.
Like I think it's, I wouldn't fault you. I know you don't fold because you have ace king and this hand is on Tactical Tuesday, and like so, I know you don't fold, but I think folding is actually a reasonable course of action.
I agree. You know what's going through my mind in the spot before I called? I did click call. Because I'm gonna flop a king and get stacked. Like that's exactly what I was thinking. Which is probably a good, indicator that maybe I could start seriously considering fold more. But I don't.
Yeah.
So I put in the $165. We go to a
Yep.
flop. We do flop a king at least.
Mm-hmm.
We get the miracle flop, the only flop that I'm really happy to see. Even maybe like ace X is like the same thing. But anyways, king 4. Just can't
Pretty
believe
good.
how hot I'm running. Just thanking the poker gods for this stack.
Mm-hmm.
So the whale in the big blind to 4-bet pre-flop decides to check. Did not expect this. I thought that they'd be c-betting some size, not necessarily a quarter because it's a fish, but just c-betting aces, c-betting ace king.
Probably c-betting queens.
Maybe queens. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
If he what is his checking range here, right? Because his cold 4 range is extremely narrow, like we said. So like maybe we can even narrow down his checking range here. Like, do you think it's just like range and he's just trapping, or? Is it only
I
queens? Is it only queens and aces? Like,
I don't know, like if it's range. I think that's kind of an impossible
yeah.
question on this board to really know. You know, just something that's like actually a really important concept that I learned like 25 years ago or so. There's a book by Mike Caro, who I'm going to cite, The Fundamental Secrets of No Limit Hold'em. It was like a book in the 90s, and a lot of it, or maybe just the fundamental secrets of poker. I can't remember the exact title, but anyway, I don't even know if it's applicable to no limit only. But one thing that like he noticed, or he observed in, lower level players was that he called it the law of loose wiring. And the law of loose wiring was that like they don't know what they're going to do until they actually do it. And presented with the same exact scenario multiple times, they can choose wildly different actions every single time. It's just like somewhat arbitrary. So like, I have no idea if they're checking range. I presume they don't have a strategy. And so they're going to bet sometimes when they feel like it, and they're going to check other times when they feel like it. And who knows what is influencing either action, but I don't think it's rooted in like a hard strategy for a spot. I think it's more rooted in how they feel.
So basically, like, you don't think that this check is meaningful? Is that like another way to say that? Like you can't really read into this at all? Like,
well, I'm not going to try to figure out what their strategy is.
Okay.
I guess that's the main part is like, I'm not going to try to figure out like if they're checking range here, what their actual like strategy is. I would say that the check, I think any action is meaningful, I guess. Yeah. Like, so the check has to have some meaning. In this spot, that's like villain has an extremely tight range. You can check versus their check, you can check back the flop. I think that's reasonable. I think you could also bet the flop like very small, like a fifth, and that's reasonable too. The SPR is such that like you flop jackpot. So like it doesn't really matter what you do. You're almost certainly going to be stacking them every single time. So yeah, just the figuring out the path where you stack them the most is like the critical part of this. And I think that like no matter what path you take, you're probably just stacking them most of the time here. So bet or check doesn't really matter to me.
Gotcha. Okay.
And I mean, if they bet, then you're just going to call. So it's not like your hand, like when you flop this, it doesn't matter. Like you can play this hand any way you want, and it's going to be okay.
I'll agree. Sorry. So the reason why it matters is to me is because I know what the turn card is.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. On the flop, it didn't matter to me. That was my mindset. I was
sure.
Like, yeah, whatever. I'm just, I can check and get the money later. I could bet small now and get the rest of the money later. Like you probably, we were basically saying his range is queens plus and ace king. None of those hands are going to fold to a small flop c bet, and we probably get the money from all of those hands.
Well, we think that's their range,
sure,
right?
Sure.
We think it is. Like there is the possibility that maybe they just do something weird for some weird reason, right? Like maybe they got the jack four and like they're the 10 deuce and they're like trying to do a Doyle memorial. Like who knows?
Sure.
Who knows exactly what's going on? I guess for that reason, I mean, I don't think it actually matters. I think that like if you bet a fifth here and then check back turn, you can still stack 10 deuce and jack 3 or jack 4. Can't even remember what the Robbie hand is now. So anyway, like again, flop is irrelevant. You can bet or check. Doesn't really matter. You opt to check. That's probably the safer path. I mean, it doesn't matter. They're both safe. The turn though does make things more interesting.
Yeah. Little sad to see the turn as soon as it peels. Yeah, queen of spades. Sorry. Just upgrades one of the hands that we were planning on stacking. Not much more like fear than that. It's like, I see the queen and I'm like, like wish it was something different, but not panicking or anything yet.
I think the queen's interesting because it makes it to where like maybe you don't always stack like jacks now. Yeah. If they did cold 4-bet jacks.
Sure.
So like maybe that it has that effect, and then also the obvious of like it promotes queens full, and it promotes queens to queens full. Yep. Which is like huge. And And now like Jax is also never going to bet the turn or rarely going to bet the turn, which
Sure.
kind of sucks for us. But
maybe not even aces, right? Like, let's say he did decide to trap aces on the flop. This might be one of the turns where they just decide, yeah, I should probably just check again because.
Well, yeah, I think that like they're going to be on the lookout for threats, and like the queen is like, oh no, like now they could have queens and beat me, so I need to like be more cautious here without missing the obvious point of like you're going broke no matter what you do if you have aces.
So don't love the queen, don't hate it. Now I hate it.
Yeah, so they bet half pot on the turn. This is deadly. This feels deadly, right?
It felt. Okay, I'm just gonna say it. I knew, like, I knew that this was queen's full in the moment. I know that sounds like just completely ridiculous to say, but I think I can go as far as to say that there's not a single other hand that this guy plays in this manner. I think
they bet half pot, 246 and a 495.
I think aces just c-bets the flop. I know that that's not like, necessarily like sound or the best way to do it, but I think fish just c-bet the flop with ace king and aces. I think queens checks the flop.
They could have ace king. You could be chopping.
I think ace king just bets the flop though. That's what I think. It's like, yeah, okay.
Yeah,
it could be chopping. Yeah, they could check like some hands. They could have 10 deuce and jack 3 and like whatever, but I think they bet ace king on the flop. And like, that's just, I think they bet ace king and aces. And I think maybe the only hand that they 4-bet pre-flop and check on the flop is queens. I think the only hand that they 4-bet pre-flop, check on the flop, and then bet half pot on the turn is queens.
Yeah. So you just fold the turn.
I mean, I don't even fold the river, so spoil this. It was like the spot where like I really like if I was playing above the rim, if I really was playing my A game, I would really like to think that I'd be able to find a fold here. And like would have been able to just trust everything that I said about how this guy plays his range and that there's really only queens full. And I think like that's just a good indicator for me that I'm playing really, really well and that I'm playing my A game, is that like I trust myself to make these big folds in the spot where like I'm not gonna know the answer and I'm not gonna get any feedback that like confirms whether I was right or wrong. And so yeah, I mean, not to spoil anything, but yeah, this guy does have queens. And
so there's a fundamental concept I think that's important for the listener to wrap their head around too, like in the way that villains played this hand. One reason why I think you're able to make this soul read, right? I think like my definition of like what a soul read is when you can distill down villains' entire range to one hand. Like based on the actions they've taken leading up to this point, they have one hand and one hand only, and you know exactly what hand that is, right? Like that to me is like a soul read. They only have like one hand in a situation. So one part of, soul reading somebody that is like quite important is that based on their previous actions, they have very few hands in some kind of line that they take or sizing. They funnel in very, very few hands. And so like this all starts getting set up with pre-flop when they cold 4-bet, right? So for the listener, this is why it's important to, cold 4-bet more hands than like aces and queens and ace king, right? Out of the big blind, like when the cutoff opens and the button 3-bets. Because like when you do that, now all of a sudden, like you've kind of made it to where you've got like 34 combos pre-flop, right? You've got aces, you've got kings, you've got queens, that's 18. And then you've got ace king, which is 16. And ace king may not even be pure, right? They can cold flat, I think, with ace king. They can probably cold flat with queens too, to be honest. Like I think some percentage of the time they are going to do it with both hands. So like you've probably even got more reduction based on their tendency to like cold flat. So that's kind of the genesis of this soul read, is that they only start with so many combos. And from there, you just deduce how they would play each of these hands given the profile, right? And you think like aces probably bets the flop at a highish frequency, right? But if they don't bet the flop, they probably don't bet half pot on a queen on the turn, right? So like, and you have an ace, which makes it to where they can only have 3 combos of aces anyway. So like those combos are reduced significantly. You have ace king, which reduces the amount of ace king they have in their range. And ace king almost always bets, right? So now like we've removed a lot of the hands villain can have, and like queens is like the one hand that makes sense. Like it's the one hand that they have that they cold for and then play in this manner that like fits the profile of like every action that they take is consistent with queens, and they started with very few hands to begin with.
Yeah.
So
I think another way to say what you just said is like there's no removal to them having queens here, whereas like there's lots of removal based on their sizing and their actions to aces and ace king and our exact hand too, like having
exactly queens. Like given this exact path that they've taken, the line they've taken, the board and the sizing scheme, when you factor in all those variables, like there's one hand that they probably have absolutely, right? They probably have queens at full frequency when they take this exact path, and all the other hands that they could have, there's alternative paths for them to take. But queens, they have it at full frequency, which to me, yeah, like when you actually like look through the puzzle of this hand, it starts with pre-flop, and that's kind of like what makes you able to make the soul read on the turn, because like you're right, it's actually like I know this is. I have to figure out how to frame this. When you think about it logically and rationally, it makes sense. Like the whole everything makes sense, and like it actually seems like somewhat easy, right? Like that. Oh, if I really think about this, like the only rational conclusion is that they have queens full, right? Much harder to do in game, but if you knew in game, then you did figure out the puzzle on the fly. Like your subconscious knew that they had queens.
Yeah.
And, you know, at that point, you know, the next step is just like, it's the execution step, right? That's in a lot of ways, the execution step is much more difficult than the actual problem solving step of figuring out, you know, what's going on. You also have to execute, right? Like we talked a lot about soul reads, and like, if you go back in time and, you know, watch like the old Negreanu videos where he like calls out villain's exact hand and then, you know, still calls just to see that he called out their exact hand, right? Like problem solving on point, execution not so good. So anyway, like the reason why I walked through that whole process of problem solving is that when it happens in game, it feels like it's a much more difficult problem to solve, and it's much scarier to trust your ability to find the answer, like when you're in the moment. But I think the reality is like, if you think about it, okay, like queens makes all the sense in the world. Like folding isn't outlandish, right? It's just like, it's an above the rim decision.
I think it's outlandish, right? But I think that doesn't mean that it's like bad or, you know, like I think it is pretty crazy. Like I bet that if we showed this hand to like, you know, 90% of people that, you know, whatever in the village or just people in the poker room or whatever, like they would just say like, oh, this is how can you fold? Like in a 4-bet pot, you flop trips with ace king.
Yeah. So, I don't care. So
yeah. Well, I'm just saying that like it's, you know, it is definitely like, you know, on the scale of folds, like this is like one of the crazier ones, or it like looks crazy on the surface.
I mean, we're never going to have a hero fold episode if this keeps up, you know. This could have been the beginning of John and his hero folding.
Don't hold your breath for that episode. I know he has queens, and I just get stacked anyways. If you want to just fly through the river.
Well, it's I'll fly through. Like you call, and then you know, the river is like it completes the backdoor flush, which is maybe your last remaining hope of something that you beat.
It's not a hope, I guess.
Oh, yeah. Anyway,
I know he doesn't have any ace jack suited or ace 5. He does not. I mean,
maybe ace king of spades you could have chopped with, but not now. You actually now lose to ace king of spades. That's true. One combo. So yeah, villain jams. Bets turn. Bets river. Has queens full. John loses. Ruse his ability to problem solve at a high level and not be able to execute.
We rarely talk about this kind of stuff on Tactical Tuesday, but I think this is like indicative of a pretty big mental game leak. And I like, it's like you said, like there's this, like I was able to do the problem solving and I wasn't able to do the execution. Like there's like part of me that sort of just like wanted to throw my hands up in the air and say like, oh, like poor me, look at me getting cooler, like in these in these hands. Like just like there's like something. There's definitely something there because like on the turn I knew that he had queens, and I willingly stacked myself kind of for some reason, and you know, part of it is just like, yeah, like no one would say anything if I showed them this hand, right? Like I know that in the back of my mind that most people would just say this is a cooler, you know, move on. And you know, I'm sure that sort of allows me to like stack myself a little bit more comfortably, despite knowing that I'm gonna get stacked. But anyways, I think that this is like, you know, this is like clearly indicative of me like having some sort of mental game issue between problem solving and execution. There's something going on there.
You know, the name of this podcast is Chasing Poker Greatness, right? And I would say that for the listener, like if you're aspiring to play at a very high level, you have to not be able to care about what the general population thinks about a hand history. Because like if everybody understands everything that you do, where's your edge at? How are you better than everybody else? Like how are you trying to become the best poker player you can and actually chase poker greatness, right? Like, so yeah, it doesn't matter if nobody understands what you did or why you did it. Like that's almost irrelevant, because like that should be the goal. The goal should be to play at such a high level that people are like, I don't get it. Like, or even they think like that's just bad, right? That's the best thing that people think. That's just bad, because that means they're not willing to try it themselves. And like you've locked up that edge for the rest of your life. When like another pro says something is like just outright losing or outright bad. So yeah, I think that you just got to get more comfortable being uncomfortable and recognizing that like to play at the highest level that you're capable of, you must trust these reads in these types of situations against this specific player profile. When you say like, I knew they had queens full on the turn and I called anyway. I mean, that's performance, right? That's mental game. That's not about poker strategy, because you knew like the strategist inside of you knew what to do. You just couldn't pull the trigger.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, long episode, starting the episode, long first hand. We'll be coming right back at you after the break, and maybe it won't take another 30 minutes, although I'm feeling especially chatty today, so maybe it will. Stick around after the break.
Are you a lone wolf searching for the ultimate pack? The CPG Wolf program is a close-knit brotherhood hell-bent on one thing only: chasing poker greatness. Powered by bleeding-edge wolf strats and led by Coach Brad and his lieutenants, CPG Wolves are systematically prepared for almost any spot they'll encounter on the green felt. If you want to plug into an elite team and have a step-by-step game plan to realize your full poker potential, you can apply at cpgwolves.com. Space is limited, and the pack is only as strong as its weakest member. So only the hungriest, grittiest, and most driven will be accepted into the program. Applications are open at cpgwolves.com.
All right, welcome back from the break. I've been consoling John this whole time during the intermission. Just, you can do it, buddy. You can do it next time. You'll have another chance, you know, maybe in 2 years or so to relive that spot and do better. Let's see this second ace king.
More ace king, more fish.
More ace king. So everybody folds to John in the cutoff. Small blind calls, big blind folds. So there is $60 in the middle. The flop is deuce tray 7 with the deuce tray of spades. John has ace king with the ace of spades. The small blind checks, you know, just many ways you could go about the spot. My preference, probably just start betting a third and check back the turn and kind of see what happens on the river would be my general plan.
Yep. I actually consider this c-bet more like a value bet, even though I think previously I used to think of it as me trying to bluff, but I think I'm actually just value betting ace king, trying to get called by worse hands, which I think lots of worse hands will call a third on 7-3 deuce, lots of 2 overs, all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We do not get called though.
You get raised very tinily. Is tinily a word?
Now it is.
You get raised very small. They check raise to $44. I just can't imagine folding now. You're
I
getting
think so.
almost 5-1. You have like an ace or a king and backdoor spades, and just lots of good things can happen like downstream. So
Backdoor wheel.
backdoor wheel. You do turn a king. So now the board is king 7 deuce tray with the king 7 of diamonds, deuce tray of spades. There's 148 in the middle, and villain bets pretty big, close to pot.
Yep.
They bet 128 into 148. So
Any thoughts here other than just call? You ever raise here? Double flush draw, king 7 3 deuce, diamond.
raising is interesting. I think raising is actually pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Like going for something like small and then checking back on like a wide variety of rivers or folding to the bet jam on the turn.
Yep.
I think the raise path is probably easier to play on the turn. You're just less likely to make any sort of mistake.
Yeah.
And it makes a lot of sense. So like my preference would be to raise the turn. Just,
Yeah. Eliminate any guessing like downstream on our
Yeah.
part. And
eliminate guessing, play rivers very well, and if they do decide with like a set or something to not bet jam the turn, then you can make it a showdown. You can realize all your equity at a much cheaper price. So like, yeah, I would be a big fan of raising the turn here personally.
that's good because I didn't.
And I mean, you probably know. You probably knew that I would probably raise the turn here. I think,
Yeah.
like when you asked that question, because that's a thing that like it's definitely a weapon that I deploy
Yeah.
more
something that-
often
Yeah, for
than
sure.
most players.
Yeah,
I think.
Way more often than me. It's something that you mention all the time, and I'm regularly just like, oh shit, I didn't think about that. Like I only thought about calling.
Yeah.
That's why I call here because I didn't think about that.
And now you river top 2. So the river is an ace of clubs. Final board is ace, king, 7 deuce tray of spades. 4-5 completes on the river. You do now beat deuce tray 7,
King
and
7.
deuce 7.
King 7.
Maybe king 7 too. Yeah. So you do beat some 2-pair on the river, and villain goes pot and pot.
That's about half my stack. I have 912. He bets 400 into 404 on the river. If I was gonna jam, it'd be a click. Oh, this is the spot where I had the most questions. And I'm also I had a lot of questions about this spot, but I'm also would not be surprised if you just were like, what's the question?
This is hard.
Oh, thank God.
I mean, I'll tell you what, like intuitively, my snap thought is to fold.
Oh,
Like I'm
whoa.
pot, check raise pot. Like, fuck. I mean, that's just so strong. Like, maybe I'm too nitty. That like my initial thought is like, my God, like what?
So your
What
decision between fold and call. You're not even considering jamming
Well,
here.
when I consider call, that's when the door to raise becomes more apparent, because like when I consider call, right? I think call and raise are very much related to each other, because calling, we need value domination, right? And raising, we need value domination. So like those two actions are like very similar to each other. So like as soon as you start considering call, I think you also consider raise, because like if they have enough worse 2-pair to bet that you can call, maybe they have enough worse 2-pair that you can raise and max value at you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think
Problem
those
is
two
that
actions.
Yeah. The problem is that
are
it's
related.
really hard to find 2-pair combos.
I mean, I guess
That was my problem on the river.
yeah, like this sizing scheme of like check raise small pot, I believe is fairly rare. I actually think that if they had like their air balls, they're more likely to bet like half on the turn or like 75% instead of pot. And then the pot river is also like especially terrifying.
Yeah.
So I mean, basically, like it's going to boil down to like how many 2-pair combos do they have of like deuce tray, tray 7, and deuce 7 suited, right? They got 3 combos of deuce tray, 2 combos of 7 tray, 2 combos of 7 deuce, if they have all of them, and that's 7. Now they already have 9 combos of sets, deuces, trays, and 7s from the jump, right? Maybe they've got some combos of like king 7 too, right? So that's like 9. So now we're up 9 and 9. So I mean, the problem is that all the sets play this way. Like all the sets can play this way, right? And I don't know how much 2-pair they have. There's got to be some form of removal with the 2-pair. I don't even know if bottom sometimes. 2.
Yeah.
I don't know if bottom 2 bets pot on the river here, like with this run out of an ace and a king.
Yeah.
Like, so I'm not even sure that like their smaller 2-pair bets the river, like bets the turn and bets the river using this size. So like, I can pretty quickly rule out jam. I think jam is just too thin.
Yeah.
Because there's removal there, and they've got every combo of set, and we don't know how. We're like just randomly guessing at how much 2-pair they have.
Yeah. Like another consideration I think that makes the jam even thinner is that like they can't have ace-x of spades that check raise the flop and maybe value bets the river like this. Just overplays her hand, and then like they don't even have that though. Like if because I have the ace of spades, like we could say like, oh, maybe we could target ace 7 of spades, or like ace 8 of spades, or ace 5 of spades, ace 4, like some of those hands that like make reasonable check raises on the flop and could conceivably value bet the river, thinking that they have the best hand once they river top pair. But we don't even have that option because we have the ace of spades. So like another argument for not raising, I think.
Yeah, I just wouldn't raise the river. I think now that I've thought my way through it, I'm gonna rule out raise for myself. Like I would never raise. So for me, it's between call and fold.
Okay.
Calling is safer because there's this inherent possibility of like randomness that it's easy to over bluff. It's easy to bluff enough that we can call if there's some like button clicking going on. Yeah. And that's always the fear, right? Is in a spot like this. Unlike the last hand where they called 4-bet pre, the button clicking possibility is still open for business.
Yeah.
So
flat the small blind.
Huh?
Yeah, when they flat the small blind facing a cutoff open, they could,
Right. But yeah, I mean, I still feel like I just want to fold the river, and just that's like my.
Okay.
I feel that way. I don't know if I would. This is like, to me, this river call is actually like the river fold is actually scarier in this spot to me than the last hand, because last hand it was like it can be fairly clear that like a lot of the bullshit is out.
Yeah.
In this hand, it's not as obvious that like they just don't have like queen jack off or something, and like they're just going berserk.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, call or fold would really. I would like to know more information about this player. I would like to have played with them for however many hands you did, and really just get a sense of like how they're playing poker, and
how quickly did they bet the river, even, right? Like that's
how quickly did they bet the river? Like, do we have any other like information on just how they've played other hands, that sort of thing. So that information would be really critical to me actually in determining whether I call or fold. On the surface, without any extra information, I just flip a coin. I don't really know what I would do. Like I think the safer play is to call, but I don't think folding is unreasonable either.
I tanked almost all the way down, almost ran out of time trying to decide what to do on the river before doing this.
Oof.
And I got snapped.
Yeah.
Not what you thought.
Not what I thought for sure. The ace 5 of hearts. Yeah, see, that's I definitely would have missed out on value. Like the random button clicking though, that's the biggest fear for me.
This worked out, but I just want to like tell the audience and listeners that I'm more on board with your analysis of thinking about flattening or folding. I think after like going through this hand and like kind of just eliminating all the two pairs, I'm with you. Like they could have 7-3 and deuce 3, but like I don't think most people like flat those hands, even like the fishiest fish, right? Like this guy's like ace 5 suited, which is like a very, very, it's very different from 7-3. Yeah, I think my decision should have been between call or fold on the river, like you said.
Well, again, this there's like that element of like randomly clicking buttons, right? Like this is why like it really matters to know like what this villain is thinking and how they're playing hands. Like what's their typical size when they bet? Like all of those like additional data points are like extremely helpful in navigating a spot like this.
Right.
And yeah, I don't really know what you knew or what you saw, or if you saw or knew anything when this hand popped up. But yeah, it's I
didn't see or know anything. I just kind of like, I'm top 2, and that's a pretty good hand. And...
Yeah. Well, nice hand. Like I said before, the safer play for me is the call, just because of some like it's very, very, it's very easy for them to do something that enables us to call. Right. So anyway, good episodes, John. I think you're probably right to be confused in this spot, I think, or just be torn between a lot of different actions, because yeah, it's a tricky spot and pretty rare. So all right.
That's it for Ace King versus Fish. See you next week.
And by the way, for the listener, I would have raised the turn, and so then jammed river, and I still would have stacked him. Like,
hey man, maybe you just check folds the river if you raise the turn before all the money goes in. I don't know.
Maybe
he did snap.
Maybe they bet pot. Maybe they bet pot. You raise and they snap with ace 5. So I'm gonna say that like, if I would have played the hand the way I wanted to, or if the hand was played the way I wanted to, then they would have called my small turn raise. I would have jammed river for value, and same result, just different avenue of getting there to save myself. All right. That's all I got for this week's episode of Tactical Tuesday. Man, long one. Who knew that playing ace king against fish was so hard? But apparently it is.
We thought king queen was hard. Now look at us.
Yeah, tough.
Wait till I get dealt aces. We might have like a 3-hour episode.
Yeah.
See you next week, everybody.
See you next week.
Thanks for listening to Chasing Poker Greatness. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts or on your favorite podcast app. Go to chasingpokergreatness.com to get the newsletter. Join the Greatness Village community, book a coaching session, or dive into the latest data-driven poker courses. Follow the show on Twitter @CPG Podcast.